Hi, I'm Saddam Hussain here. Welcome back to CBSE Board Economics. We're carrying on with the budget chapter. This is the last chapter in the budget deficits. Earlier, we used to discuss in detail about budget deficit. There are three kinds of deficits they have: revenue deficit, fiscal deficit, and primary deficit. Its implications we used to see earlier. Now this year they have reduced the syllabus. You just have to know the meanings of these deficits. Let's see one by one. The first one, you anticipated revenue expenditure is more than revenue receipts. What it means, the government is spending more money on subsidies, scholarship, unemployment allowance, salaries, administration, defense, law and order, then what it is getting as taxes from the public. That leads to revenue deficit. So is it good or bad? Okay, this is not very good, because it's not leading to increase in the infrastructure. It's not leading to increase in assets. It's not decreasing the liabilities. It's a kind of unnecessary expenditure the government is going up. So what you are supposed to remember here, revenue deficit is equal to revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts. That is, revenue expenditure is greater than revenue receipts, it leads to revenue deficit. So you just have to remember the formula: revenue deficit is equal to revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts. You don't have to learn implications and all. Implications will be, to meet this revenue expenditure, the government has to take it from capital receipts. So that is very dangerous. It leads to increase in liabilities or decrease in assets of the government. For now, you remember revenue deficit is equal to revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts. That is excess of revenue expenditure minus revenue, excess of revenue expenditure over revenue receipts. The second deficit you will be learning here is fiscal deficit. That's very important in the government budget. Fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is the total expenditure of the government that includes both revenue expenditure and capital expenditure, minus total receipts. It includes both revenue receipts and capital receipts, excluding borrowings. Excluding borrowings. So we can say simply fiscal deficit is nothing but borrowings. You just remember the formula. The fiscal deficit is equal to total expenditure, that is equal to revenue expenditure plus capital expenditure minus total receipts, receipts plus capital receipts excluding borrowings, minus borrowings. That means simply we can say fiscal deficit is nothing but borrowings. Now if you want to just have a brief idea about the implications, you know what it shows. Fiscal deficit shows how far the government is living beyond its means. That's a government is spending hell of a lot, so that is leading to fiscal deficit. So that means we have to borrow from World Bank, we have to borrow from International Monetary Fund, we have to borrow from other countries. So that makes the country dependent on other countries. It leads to, if the fiscal deficit is high, the government will be caught in the vicious circle of debt trap. You don't have to learn all this, just remember the formula. Fiscal deficit is nothing but borrowings. Fiscal deficit is equal to borrowings. Fiscal deficit is total expenditure of the government minus total receipts excluding borrowings. And the last one, you have primary deficit. What is primary deficit? Primary deficit is fiscal deficit minus interest payments. Interest payments, of course, on the past loans which we have taken it. Why the government is borrowing this year, though the government is able to meet all its expenditure, but the interest payments as past loans are so much. To meet those interest payments, the government is borrowing again this year. That is called primary deficit. Remember the formula. Primary deficit is called fiscal deficit minus interest payments on the past loans, of course. Just remember the three formula. One is budget deficits. In your syllabus, you just have to remember the formula or meaning of all the three deficits. Again, I repeat, primary deficit is equal to primary deficit is the first one. You have revenue deficit, that is revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts, that is excess of revenue expenditure over revenue receipts is revenue deficit. Fiscal deficit is nothing but borrowings. Fiscal deficit is equal to borrowing. Fiscal deficit is total expenditure of the government, which includes capital expenditure plus revenue expenditure minus total receipts, which includes revenue receipts and capital receipts excluding borrowings, minus borrowings. So that means fiscal deficit nothing but borrowings. And the last one you have primary deficit. Primary deficit is nothing but fiscal deficit. After finding out fiscal deficit, from this you subtract interest payments on the past loans, you get primary deficit. That's all we have time for this short video. Till we meet next time, it's goodbye.